want to talk about mental illness and depression specifically in this video. I haven't done a lot of videos on mental illness, and I'm going to work on putting some more out there. So this is my first video in an attempt to clear up some stuff about mental illness. My name is Dr. Philip Oob. I'm a functional medicine doctor here in Austin, Texas, and a study hit my inbox which made me realize that I have not done enough on depression. And the study was actually about hormone replacement in menopausal women, and it said that if you take estrogen and progesterone, and they double-blinded these women, they noticed that there was less depression rates in our menopausal women who took hormone therapy. They did better, they had less depression, and the rate was fairly staggering, 17% versus 32%. 17% developed depression in the treated group, 32% in the non-treated group. So needless to say, without any other interventions, just applying hormones, and they didn't even do high dose, just applying hormones lowers your rates of depression. So that spurred me to think about, well, what else are my patients doing for depression, anxiety, other mental illness? What can you do naturally to improve your situation? Everyone knows about SSRIs and SNRIs like Prozac, Zoloft, Cymbalta. They're all over the news. They're all over your doctor's offices. So if you've ever had depression or anxiety, it's very high possibility that you've already been told to take an SSRI or Wellbutrin or something. So instead of talking about all those, I'm going to talk about the natural things you can do to improve depression. First, you probably already know that depression or mental illness is a neurotransmitter problem, which is also said to be a hormone problem. Neurotransmitters are hormones, just like testosterone is a hormone. So when you have depression or anxiety or something, mental illness, then you have a hormone disruption. So one of the first things I want you to think of if you have depression or anxiety is, what is my hormone balance like? The two main hormones I want you to think about are, number one, adrenals. That dominates everything in the mental illness world. If your adrenals are on overdrive, then you will never get better. Your adrenal glands make a hormone called cortisol, which I've talked about in other videos. Cortisol is your stress hormone. That stress hormone will tear your body apart. If you have several days to lose, then I urge you to read a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, and it goes into grave detail about how cortisol destroys every part of your system and uses research to prove it. A great book if you're bored and want to learn how cortisol is destroying you. But the basics of this video is to tell you that your cortisol is wrecking you. So what is stimulating your cortisol to cause your mental illness? The main thing is stress. We're American, we have tons of things on our plate, and as soon as we get one thing off our plate, we start looking for another one to volunteer at an HOA or a school board or something like that. So the first thing is slow down. Stop putting so much on your plate. Just become body aware and think about all the stressors that are going on in your life and wash them out and focus in on how you are alive. There's a lot of other things we can talk about with adrenals and how to treat them. I'll save those for other videos, but for now, take care of your adrenals. My favorite adrenal supplements are Adrenal in the morning and Adrenavive in the evening. You would take 2 Adrenal in the morning, 1 Adrenavive in the evening. My other favorite herb is ashwagandha. Anyone and everyone can take ashwagandha. It's a wonderful herb. It's fairly cheap. You can find it at most stores. We use pure encapsulations for ashwagandha. You want to aim for about 500 milligrams twice a day. So adrenals are your number one hormone that cause mental illness. Number 2 is going to be your sexual hormones. And I say sexual hormones because females, it's estrogen, progesterone balance. Males, it's mainly just testosterone. Is it low? Is it high? No one ever really gets high. Is it too low? That causes mental instability. It can cause OCD, depression, anxiety. Same thing with females. They tend to, as estrogen gets higher and higher, they tend to enter an anxiety state, but some women enter the depression state too. So my favorite supplements for hormone balance, at least on the female side, is DIM Detox. Many women with any kind of hormone imbalance, DIM Detox twice a day from pure encapsulations works really well to help balance their female hormones. Now, sugar and adrenals regulate your estrogen. So if you're consuming too much sugar and carbs, that's going to drive your estrogen levels up, and you might have been diagnosed with something called PCOS. If you have PCOS, really you have estrogen dominance. If you have estrogen dominance, really you're eating too much carbs and sugar, and you need DIM Detox to help break down the estrogen. I've done other videos on that, so you can look that up. As far as males go, if your testosterone is low, you should look for the reasons that your testosterone is low, usually because you're also consuming too much sugar and carbs. But really it needs gut health and a whole system overhaul, including adrenal support. So many of you guys are already on testosterone therapy, and I encourage anyone on testosterone therapy to investigate the root cause of their low testosterone, so hopefully they can get off of testosterone therapy, or at least try. So that's the big number one for mental illness is adrenals and hormone. The big number two is going to be inflammation. Inflammation causes everything bad and nothing good. Unless you've got a cut or a scratch or an acute injury, there's no good reason to have inflammation roaming around your body all day long, every day. So inflammation causes all things bad, and everyone experiences inflammation differently. So it's been said, there's new journal articles coming out showing that inflammation is actually the cause to depression, anxiety, is OCD, whatever it might be. And based on your genetics and your individual susceptibility, you may experience depression when you're inflamed. I may experience gut pain or abdominal pain. Everyone's different on how we experience inflammation. Where that inflammation is coming from, if you don't have an injury or a sore or something that you can obviously see or feel, then almost definitely it's coming from the bowels. And we'll get to that in a second. So inflammation is one of the big causes of depression, but finding why you have inflammation is going to be harder for you, and you may need a functional medicine doctor to figure that out. Anyone and everyone can take curcumin to lower inflammation. That's a beautiful supplement, but it does not cure all. We use curcumin about 500 milligrams. You want to take it 2 or 3 times a day. And if that's helping your depression, great. Keep looking for your sources of inflammation. Next, I'll talk about methylation, and I'll talk about methylation briefly because I feel like people chase the rabbit too far into the hole when they talk about methylation. The main thing I want to point out about methylation is make sure you're checking your homocysteine levels. That's a simple blood order. Any doctor can order that. It doesn't even have to be fasting. But supporting your methylation cycle using B-complex vitamins is mainly how we do it. Use B-complex twice a day. We use pure encapsulations for that too. And we also use DIM detox to support the methylation pathway. And notice some overlap between hormone balance and methylation balance. The reason why you need to make sure your methylation pathways are working is because methylation is how you create neurotransmitters. So you've probably heard from the pharmaceutical industry that serotonin is low in depressive states. So if your serotonin is low, you need to work on the things that create more serotonin. So methylation is one of the ways to balance neurotransmitters and create those neurotransmitters. Because if you don't have enough, you can be depressed, you can be anxious, you can be OCD, you can have any of those balances. So you can also take SSRIs, which are drugs. They don't help you create more serotonin. What they do is they stop the brain from breaking down the serotonin so much, so there's more available. But you can create your own serotonin. You've done it all your life, and you will continue to do so, but you need to make more. So you need to give your body the tools it needs to make more serotonin and quit doing the things that's burning up your serotonin, which leads me to the next thing. The next thing is gut health. Your gut, your abdomen consumes about 70 to 80% of the serotonin. Let me say that differently. Your gut makes 70 to 80% of the serotonin that you need on a daily basis, not your brain. The brain took too much focus away in the serotonin. Your bowels can't get depressed, but they can get irritable. Have you heard of irritable bowel syndrome or IBS? It's kind of like depression for the bowels. So if your bowels are off, you can expect that your brain is going to be off, and vice versa. You may not have bowel symptoms, but if your brain is off, it's almost definitely saying that your bowels are off, because 70 to 80% of the serotonin is made in your bowels. So if your bowels are fighting a war down there because of yeast overgrowth or bacterial overgrowth, or it's just reacting to too many foods, then you're not going to have enough serotonin to be made upstream or upstairs. Your bowel is going to steal all the products needed to make serotonin from your brain in order to assimilate nutrients and keep the factory running. We all think we depend on our brain to survive, but truth be told, if you cannot digest food, if you cannot absorb food, then none of the other organs are going to work. So your gut is actually the most important organ you have, because without the gut, nothing else will work. So that actually led to the next two things I pointed out at the same time. Number one in the gut health area is going to be food reactions. If you know a celiac patient that's been diagnosed with celiac, a friend, then you should probably know that they most likely have higher rates, or they do have higher rates of anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, and sometimes this starts even 10 years before their celiac diagnosis, because food causes reactions. So if you're sensitive to a food like gluten and dairy, those are the two biggest triggers, and you're consuming those foods on a daily basis, you may not feel like, oh my God, I ate gluten today, so I'm depressed today. No, you're eating it regularly, so you're always in a state of depression, or you'll swing in and out of that depression based on how your gut is reacting to those foods. But the first thing you can do to try to improve your bowel health is by removing the common food triggers. Gluten and dairy are the two biggest food triggers. Just remove them from the diet. Anyone and everyone can live without gluten and dairy. You may not want to, you may not like it, but if you could stop being depressed just by not eating two food groups, you would be so much happier, literally. So dairy causes some interesting reactions in people, and I get more people crying in my office when I ask them to remove dairy than any other food group. And this is believed to be because of a protein called casomorphin. This is a protein that's found in milk. If you notice the word queso, kind of like casein, that's the protein in milk, but morphine is the second portion of that. If you know anything about morphine and narcotics, you know that they're very addictive. Dairy is addictive. You will find that if you remove dairy, you'll go through some serious dairy withdrawals and crave dairy. Your brain wants that casomorphin back in it. It's a narcotic. But after you remove it for a week or two, you start noticing that your cravings go away and you're okay without dairy. You don't need that cheese on your salad or queso at dinner. You'll always enjoy dairy if you like dairy, but it's not something you need. So if you're having cravings for dairy, that's your gut telling you that there's bacteria or fungus in there growing on that casomorphin and that your brain is addicted to the casomorphin, and you should probably eliminate it from your diet. And if you start feeling better and your depression is improving, great, run with it, keep going. The next thing that I've already alluded to as far as improving gut health is dysbiosis. If that's the umbrella term that we use in functional medicine to say there's something wrong with the bacterial fungal balance in your bowels, in your microbiome, and it needs some work. Most commonly, you're going to find that there's yeast overgrowth, and yeast overgrowth needs to be squashed in order for you to get healthier. Many times when you squash that yeast overgrowth, you actually can get worse before you get better. There's tons of yeast products out there over the counter. Some of the common ones that you'll hear of are berberine, uva ursi, candibactin AR and BR from Metagenics, as well as biocidin. There's multiple things that kill yeast, so I would encourage you to find something that works for you. In general, if you take one of the supplements for yeast killing and you feel worse, you're on the right track, keep going until you don't feel that effect anymore. Now, please consult your doctor if you're feeling worse. That's maybe not a good idea to say on camera, but I just said it. So the other thing you can do to try to boost your serotonin if you're worried you're not making enough serotonin is you can take 5-HTP. 5-HTP is a supplement. It's about 100 milligrams, and you take it twice a day. You can take a little bit more to try to boost your serotonin levels. 5-HTP is the precursor to serotonin. Your body already makes it, but some people have a mutation called TPH2 where they can't make as much 5-HTP from their tryptophan, which is just a protein that's found in your diet. So if you can't convert tryptophan to 5-HTP very well, then usually taking 5-HTP to increase that baseline level of 5-HTP will allow you to make more and more serotonin. Now, this is not a drug, so it doesn't act very quickly, nor do the SSRIs work quickly. If you've ever taken an SSRI, your doctor may have told you that it takes 6 to 8 weeks for them to actually start to work also. So if you're going to implement all these things, don't expect an immediate change in the mental illness world. You have to stick to your guns, you have to make these changes, and you have to wait 6 to 8 weeks, just like you would wait for a drug 6 to 8 weeks. So if you're noticing any benefit, any mood elevations out of the deep dark hole, then stick with it and follow it through, and you might just enter a state of less swoops, less depression, and overall feel better. The rates of depression are outstanding. They're crazy right now. I just looked up the statistics online, and it's 6.7% of adults are affected with depression. That's a lot of people in this country. What's even worse and more scary is 3% of children, not adolescents, 3% of children have depression. How is that possible? When you're a child, the world is in front of you. Your life is amazing. All you have to do is play with toys and enjoy life. Yes, there's some boundaries. Your parents may discipline you every now and then, but overall life is good. 3% of our children are depressed. That's scary, guys. There's something going on with our microbiomes in our bodies to affect us to make our children depressed. And then the most staggering statistic is actually 12% of adolescents are depressed. So mothers, fathers, treat yourself if you have depression and anxiety, but look into your children, see how they're reacting. The depression and anxiety doesn't display the same as it does in adults. That outcry for help may be disobedient behavior or breaking things or anger outbursts or not listening or not doing well in school. So make sure you're attentive to your child. And if you think that maybe you or your spouse or their father, wife suffers from depression, then maybe your child is suffering from it too, and they just don't have the same symptoms. So consider the advice that I just gave as far as reducing inflammation, balancing your adrenals and your hormones, improving your methylation, removing common food triggers like gluten and dairy, balancing your bacterial and yeast overgrowth, and then boosting your serotonin levels with something like 5-HTP. Hopefully all of these things help. I would love to hear any feedback if someone's had any success with any of these treatments, because there's just not enough help for people with mental illness out there other than pharmaceuticals. So like and share this video with someone that you may know that may be suffering.